Hey folks, you're about to watch the second part of a two-part interview with Grace Reilly, host of Restoring America with Grace Reilly. In this episode, we dive into Gen Z's surprising optimism, the return of Christianity, and the quest for unity and purpose in America. I'm Hayden Ludwig, and this is Restoration Spotlight. Yeah, I'm going to focus in on something you just said. Here's how are two very important words that explain the Republican victory in 2024 and the Democrat victory in 2025. Because Mamdani and Trump didn't campaign on save our democracy or drain the swamp. I know they both said those things at various points, but that's not what won them the office. What won them office is, let me explain what the problem is. You already know it. I get you. And then here's exactly like a dozen things that I'm going to do that will concretely affect it. You know, take Mamdani, for instance. He offered genuine answers to how are you going to lower my grocery bills? He didn't say, well, we're going to take on the establishment. We're going to, save our democracy, and we're going to make sure that we build bridges instead of walls. He didn't do that. He actually gave specific answers. The problem is those answers end up in 1930s socialism. So the answer isn't more, drain the swamp rhetoric. It's not going to work on people in their 20s. It's more specifics about, let me explain why the free market, right, or the regulated market is actually going to produce better future for you and for your family, as opposed to, government centralization. Because those answers are already there, but they're not being articulated in a way. Is that how you see people in their 20s hating the politics of our time?
Gen Z needs to understand why conservative values and the free market are going to be what creates the best life for them. And the good news is, of course, facts and the truth are on our side with that. So if we were to spend more time making sure that we're focused on that why and trying to provide that, even amidst all of this political noise, which does everything possible to distract from that, from the core of these issues, which is really the key problem in general. I mean, there's so many sound bites, viral moments, so much noise going on in the political world that we can barely even explain the whys anymore, just broadly as a country. So if we focus more on that, and that's what I try to do with my show, Restoring America, that is going to be what really helps us. And it's something that conservatives should be doing in general. Because again, like things like the free market, it should be a no-brainer over socialism and communism. The record of success is on the side of the free market. The record of failure is on the side of socialism. Yet we see so many in Gen Z advocate for socialism and vote for it outright. So if we could do more work to target that why and express to these people, listen, like our policies are what's going to actually help your life. Like the leftist policies are what created the problems and are only going to make them worse.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is it's about authenticity. And the left has to fake it, but they're damn good at faking it, right? They can get you to believe that 100 years of nothing but failure, a 100% failure record didn't actually happen because they're good marketers. And what you're saying is if you come in with platitudes, it's already a marker to the young brain of you're inauthentic. And Trump is, to his credit, is the most authentic politician there is. And Mamdani has his own version of that.
Yeah. Exactly. And Trump even said that. And I think we're going to see the same thing in 2028, especially if Newsom runs, which is what people are predicting. It'll be the same sort of situation where he's considered to be charismatic, but at the same time, he has this record of failure that is so blatant that you'd have to be literally closing your eyes and covering your ears to ignore. I mean, it's that dramatic, but will the charisma be enough to win people over anyway? I mean, I would argue the same thing happened with Joe Biden, with Kamala Harris. The fact that Kamala Harris was even a serious consideration, especially with her record on the border and their economic record and the health cover-up, the fact that we even have these conversations is proof that unfortunately the why is getting lost and people are focused on the noise instead. So I think we have to understand that and focus in on it, especially when it comes to Gen Z.
Yeah, so sticking with this idea, see, I think you can see this best in Gen Z humor, right? Because the number one quality about it is its earnestness, right? You don't have to understand it to see the pattern there. Half the jokes I don't even get, right, from people who are 5 years younger than I am. But What I do see is if it comes across as polished or too prepackaged, it's fake. So if you look at it, it's post-ironic. Millennial humor is all it's like anti-jokes. It's very ironic. Like Zoomer humor is just straight in your face, no explanation. This is random and weird. And there's no forethought. And that's a sign of that's pretty damn funny, right? And you can see, there's such great memes about hey, fellow kids, from a 50-year-old, right? He's presenting himself like he's 20. And it's funny self-evidently because he's trying too hard. That's humor. But if you translate that into culture and politics and voting, it's the same thing. And I don't think that's being properly appreciated because, my God, I can't think of institutions that are worse equipped to handle that than the RNC and the DNC.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. And politicians in general, right? Like the people that are in Congress, now they're trying to create this authenticity. Just like if any of you saw, Kamala Harris's campaign page was just reactivated and she tried to do this trendy Gen Z video and
it's
she
so
used
cringe.
I think it's 67 or something as a Gen Z slang. I don't even know. I'm
Even you don't get it.
Even I don't get that. This is like the old soul in me. I don't even know all the Gen Z trends, but that apparently is some sort of Gen Z trend. So she put it in the bio of this account and everyone in Gen Z was like, this is the cringiest thing we've ever seen. You're trying way too hard. It's very obvious that you're trying. Stop.
And Trump never did that.
No, exactly. So that's why authenticity is making a huge difference. And I think now, again, part of it is the reaction to this online world where we've seen a lot and we're so used to these polished politicians, right? And now we're sick of it, quite frankly. We just want to know what's real. We want to cut to the chase. And you're so right that I think that there's definitely a pattern and connection that can be made from just what Gen Z values, finds funny, and cares about to then how they're reacting in voting in other areas.
And increasingly, that does actually unify all the generations because everybody's tired of that. Unless you're the ultimate normie and you still think it's 1995, right? And these people exist, right? You're really tired of that. That's Trump's appeal, and I agree. I think Gavin Newsom's going to have a really hard time with that because he's so slick. He's Governor Hair Gel, as my parents would joke. But I want to change gears a little bit and talk about Charlie Kirk because you brought him up earlier. And one of the things that struck me after you see just how hard the whole country took his assassination, especially young people who were very clued into him, right? And I didn't follow him that closely. I've followed his work more closely now, after the fact, and have learned a lot about this and have been frankly just humbled and amazed at how widespread his appeal is among people who are in their teens and 20s. But one of the themes that I've heard come up time and time again from men and women in their 20s is how, because of Charlie, when he was alive, I tried to have friends who were across the aisle. This is really conservatives reaching left. I don't think it's so much the other direction. But there's this yearning for, hey, it's just stupid politics, man. Can't we be friends? Can't we have the same jokes? We watch the same shows. We have the same friends. But Charlie's death really changed that, didn't it?
Yeah, and the reason is because when you had people celebrating his death, it crossed a line, right? So it really crossed a line and I really felt that where I hadn't expected to see so much evil because I have friends who are Democrats. None of them were doing this. All of my friends agreed that that of course it was tragic that Charlie was killed. But I have family members who lost friends. Actually, I had one family member who lost a friendship of many years because the person thought it was good or funny that Charlie was killed. And that's really what crossed the line. And we, as conservatives, saw an insane amount of people. It was not a minority of leftists. It was a very generous amount of leftists who were either celebrating Charlie's death, justifying it, and beyond. There were a bunch of people who got fired from their jobs for doing stuff like this. It was the most disgusting thing that I had never expected to see. I didn't think it was really that bad that we lost our humanity that much. But then, of course, because of it, young conservatives are looking around like, Charlie died for the same things that I believe. Like, so I think people realized, wow, like, do these people on the other side think that about me? Like
That's right.
that they would celebrate my death because I'm pro God, family, country. I mean, it was a line that was crossed for sure. That's really sad. And it's my hope that always that we can, open our eyes, focus back on humanity and what really matters in life, which is what Charlie did all the time, right? Charlie pointed to God, to family, what really mattered in life. And that's why Charlie's legacy isn't even really about politics. Of course it is, because he was in politics. But beyond that, he really made a point to emphasize how much more things like marriage and family and God mattered. He made sure to emphasize that what really matters and the why of all of this, of any political position, is God, your family. And that's what his driving point was as often as he could make it. And I think that's something that we just have to keep learning from. And this is on all sides. Conservatives, leftists can all learn from that, of remembering to not villainize the other side, and remembering that most people on average are not the extreme radicals that are posting that stuff, and thank God for it. And just remembering that we should be able to understand that, for the most part, each has good intentions and unite around that and have common ground.
Yeah, Charlie's murder was a clarifying moment. And one of the things that I've learned, is clarity is usually painful, but it's almost always a blessing. Because God's blessings are dangerous. You can misuse them, you can abuse them, they could kill you, right? But they're glorious when they're used the right way. One of the things that's interesting, I don't have any Democrat friends. I used to. But long before Charlie's death, we went our separate ways because the culture war does that. Everybody older than me, I'm 33, everybody older than me would say the same thing. I don't have friends across the aisle.
I've lost a lot. A lot want nothing to do with me.
But the fact, Grace, that your age group grieves the loss of those friends, I think that is something, I saw that very profoundly after he was murdered. Just the loss there, but also I wish I didn't have to lose those friends. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's a really sad thing that it's become that divided, because it doesn't need to be, quite frankly. Like, there's no reason that it has to be this extremely divided. And I say that as, obviously, like, there's rightful division in the sense of both sides on the extremes or in the middle or whatever, have very different values. But I think the point there is realizing that just because you have different values doesn't mean that they have bad intentions. And for us Christian conservatives, there's hope to win a lot of these people over if we can recognize that, and recognize the reason that we are promoting what we are is because we know and understand that this is what will create the best life for all of these individuals and for our country as a whole. So if we hold strong to that and can bring that into our relationships with other people, I think that's how I managed to have some friends on the left, is just that I've found a few that do understand, like, I may not agree with Grace on everything, but I can see that she just thinks this is the best thing and care. Like, so I think kind of trying to find that sweet spot, but of course it's really difficult because that's not always in our control.
Yeah. One of the things that I like about you a lot and respect about your show is that you are clear-eyed about what the problems are, but it's never made you bitter. You're not a cynical person. And I think there's a lot of people who, I know many of them, I won't name names, but I can think of a few right now. But seriously, a lot of people who have lived long enough to see the rot, the decay, and they often think optimism is a sign of naivete. With you, you're obviously not a naive person. You're a young person, you're old, and you're wise beyond your years. But I also think you're emblematic of a lot of people in their 20s right now, because I've met a lot of Zoomers who, whatever their experience is, they have the same kind of optimism. So I want to kind of end this by talking about the return to the church. This is the most out of left field thing anybody could have ever, guessed would happen. Young people who, if they're not breaking into the nihilistic left, they're not just becoming cultural conservatives, they're becoming diehard, almost fanatical Christians. and it's incredible to watch. So talk to me about what you're observing, where this phenomenon comes from, because I see it as a fundamentally optimistic thing. You believe you have a future, in other words, if you're doing this.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for those kind words. It means a lot. And yeah, I will say, just quickly to touch on it, looking at politics all day, every day is not something that makes you feel optimistic. And I experienced that. I experienced that every day. And it's like, even though I didn't live through it, I feel like I feel, and I feel like I feel the loss of what was and what I didn't get to experience,
too.
or what
Yeah, me
what
too.
I long for the culture to be, and what it is. So I feel that on a deep level, even though I didn't live through it, and I think a lot of young people do too. And I think that that is what directs this optimism and turn towards hope. Because first of all, we have two choices, right? We can either say, well, the country's just going to go to hell and there's nothing we can do and it's too far gone. Or we can recognize that we all only have one life, and we have this country. There's one United States. There's one country with these values that has stood now 250 years with them. And if we don't wake up every day and do what we can to preserve that for ourselves, for the future generations of America, for our children or future children, then no one else is going to. And it's up to us, and it's our responsibility to have that hope and act on it. And no matter how bleak things get, that's why I think it's our responsibility to do what we can to preserve our country. And on the faith note, I think that that's the most important thing and the best thing that could possibly come out of any of this. And it's such an encouraging thing to see this out of Gen Z. So Gen Z now is actually the leading age group attending church.
I love it.
Barna
It's so great.
just did a study finding that. And I was actually really surprised because a few years ago, there was a Pew Research study that indicated the rise of religious nuns.
Yes.
So people who are religiously unaffiliated.
It's both, isn't it?
Yes, and it is both. And that's what I'm going to get into. That is still very prevalent, and that's important. And it's not a surprise with the way that our culture and country is, unfortunately. But while that's happening, while there's this rise of religious nuns, we also have a rise of young people turning towards Christianity. So both are happening, and both are very significant because both, somehow how it works are kind of rare in their own way.
Yeah.
So it's been a dramatic decline in religion, but at the same time, Gen Z is the one who now is turning the page and showing up to church even more than Boomers or Gen X. They're the highest amount age group that's going to church and spending time at church.
And it's more male than the older demographics too, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, which is so amazing, incredible, and fascinating. And I think that the turn towards these values is a really encouraging thing. And we also did see this with Charlie Kirk and his passing. He 1000% had an impact that shook the nation and did point a lot of people towards faith. I know of a lot of people who picked up their Bibles after that and were inspired by him. And I just say that to say the Lord is always working, even in the doom that we see every day in politics and the discouraging things we see all of the time, the headlines every single day. The Lord is on his throne. He's always working, and the battle's already won. And I think when we understand that as people, that's what gives us this optimism, understanding that the Lord's already won the battle. We're called to do the best that we can every day to preserve what he's called us to, right? To share the faith, to live out the faith, to walk with the Lord. And that's all we can do. All we can do is do that with joy in the Lord. And I think hopefully it seems like more young people are deciding to take those steps. Now we're seeing that Gen Z is turning back towards marriage, back as in young people before them, millennials especially, had shifted away towards marriage.
That's
but now
right. Yeah.
Gen
Singleness.
Z, Gen Z is more optimistic about marriage. They're starting to get married younger, have families younger again. So this is kind of the beginnings of that. So we don't know how big that shift will be or that turn will be because we've obviously witnessed the complete crumbling, unfortunately, of the nuclear family in a lot of different ways. But there is definitely indications of hope, and it's coming from Gen Z in large part.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You know, one of the things that I think about a lot these days, maybe it's because I'm a father, but what kind of man or woman would build a cathedral like our ancestors did? Because those take 5 or 6 generations to build. Why would I ever start a project? I mean, a simpler analogy is planting a tree that I'll never see grow into the mighty oak. But the cathedral, I may just get the blueprint. I may just lay the cornerstone before I die. Practically nobody born in the 20th century has that attitude. And you see it a lot. It's one of the most disgusting things I see of, a lot of people who've made their bones, they're 60, 70, 80, and they're spending down what should be their kids' and grandkids' inheritance on boats and vacations and cruise ships and everything. Not opposed to any of those material objects, but that is a deeply self-centered and cynical way of living, because it's saying, I'm the last generation that will ever live. Nothing after me matters. But our ancestors didn't live that way, did they? The thing that got me and my wife to baptize our sons was not a deep theological discussion. That came later. It was actually being told, you're the ancestor of potentially 100,000 people who have yet to be born. What if how you live and raise your kids, as whether they're little heathens and pagans or little Christians, and they're toddlers, so they don't even know, but what if your behavior now in raising them means the difference between 100,000 believers in Christ who say Christ is king, or 100,000 pagans who don't, Well, gee, I never thought about it that way. But when you start thinking that way, you start to understand why people built cathedrals 1,000 years ago. And I see that kind of, maybe this is 10 years from now, but I see that kind of resurgence in big picture thinking. And it's funny enough, God is so funny like this. It's coming from the people who grew up in the rubble of the old institutions that people once built hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, and I think that that's such an excellent and fascinating point, because, of course, that's what we're called to do here on Earth. We're not supposed to just live for ourselves, and we're not designed to be that way. Even though we've seen expressive individualism completely overtake our culture through all generations, it's become, unfortunately, the norm, and in a way that's very different than how generations before us lived. But with that being said, I think that this is the question that needs to come up more in politics. The why, what's the purpose of all of this? What do we really want our country to look like?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the time people enter into politics, whether they're in politics or just citizens as they're looking at politics, just people looking at politics, deciding who to vote for, are doing it blindly. And what I mean by that is they're just adapting to the current events, listening to the current events. But when you look at current events without looking at history, philosophy, the why of these things, you miss the core of every issue. And you can't fully understand every issue.
You need context, in other words.
Yeah, and that's why we get to this point where now we're in such a mess, and I think we all fail to understand key parts of that and how to get out of it. And that's one of the reasons there's so much division. So if we can reemphasize the why as far politically, but also the why as far as faith goes and what our purpose is here on this earth, because kind of to what you're saying as well, to finish this thought out, we need to create our own purpose in life, right? No one's going to do that for us.
Yeah, right.
And for Christians, God calls us to that purpose. He tells us what to put our attention towards and what to find meaning and purpose in, and how to live our lives. But with that being said, when you had generations building things for the future, that was reflected. The fact that they saw life is eternal and as far beyond them. But now with the individualism, we're seeing that shift away. And at the same time, we see people a lot less happy. We see depression increasing, anxiety, all sorts of things. So I think we need to look at the two things. It's not working to focus on me all the time and to live based on feeling alone and what feels good in the moment. It's much better to be discerning and live as the Lord has called us to. And I think just looking at, I know that's a lot off kind of all over the place, but looking at it all together.
You're exactly right. Yeah, it's the emphasis on what is our purpose, right? And, I subscribe to the Westminster Catechism, and it puts it great. What is the chief end of man? To glorify God and to love him forever.
Yep.
And that's not how our countrymen are living.
And how's it going?
Yeah, exactly.
Can we acknowledge that this is a test, right? We've seen it played out now. Like we now can look at a subject matter test of what happens when you remove God from culture and society. It's not going very well. We should recognize that and make that connection. And that's something that people fail to do. They keep wrongly associating our problems with all the wrong things, really. They're pointing to the wrong causes.
Guns are the problem.
Yes, exactly.
Or online culture
or
is the
even
problem.
just not recognizing that the absence of God is the problem. They point to everything else except for God as what the solution should be.
Well said. Last question. You're the host of Restoring America with Grace Reilly. Tell us about the show and where people can watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the other show at Restoring America, and we're going to collaborate more.
No, this is the other show at
No,
Restoration.
this is the other show. But no, we're going to collaborate more because now we have this hybrid, right?
That's right.
Both shows. So I would love if all of you would go check it out. It's called Restoring America with Grace Reilly, and you can find it on all platforms. It's just like Restoration Spotlight. It has its own YouTube channel. It's on Instagram. You can find it into most social media. It's at Restoring America Podcast. I'm pretty sure that's what the handle is on everything, but you should be able to search it and look it up, and you can find it on Apple, Spotify as well. And we aim to get into the nitty-gritty on all these things, current events, and to try to have a good perspective that's helpful and valuable on all of those things.
That's
and
right.
Hayden will be on soon, so you have to subscribe to make sure you don't miss that.
That's right. Yeah, check it out. Awesome show. Awesome show. Grace Reilly, thank you so much for your time and insights. It's been so much fun.
Thanks so much. It's been so great to be with you, Hayden.
Thanks for tuning in to Restoration Spotlight. I'm your host, Hayden Ludwig. If you like what you hear and want to join the fight to protect the next generation of patriots, visit restoration-news.com, where we publish hard-hitting news, commentary, and investigative deep dives that put America first. That's restoration-news.com.